Well, because we're baptizing Graham today, and I'm very excited about that, and he's one of our youth, I thought I would try to say a few things to him and to our other young people in the church about the way of Jesus and what it means to me to be a Christian in today's world. And to begin, I want to say that I won't blame you if you take everything I say with a grain of salt, since my generation has done a pretty bad job of caring for God's world. Actually a horrible job, perhaps. And I feel badly about the host of problems we seem to be leaving for our young people these days. Second, I know that some of you, maybe many of you, aren't that comfortable being called Christian at times. I understand, I really do. It's not uncommon to hear things in the news about some church or some Christian leader saying or doing something that doesn't seem to be Christian at all, let alone Christ-like. Even closer to home, when someone you know at school says that you or somebody else you know is not the right kind of Christian, or condemns you or someone else for not being the right kind of person in their eyes, well, that has to turn you off from the whole Christian thing. There always seem to be those kinds of people around, people like the Pharisee in the parable, people who trust in themselves, who exalt themselves and put others down. And throughout history, too, we all know that various forms and settings of the Christian church have failed to counter evil at times in the world. For example, in response to religious violence in Europe, or Nazism in Germany, and to racism, economic exploitation, and militarism in the United States. Now, to be fair, throughout history, there have also always been forms and settings of the Christian church that did stand up and speak out to counter all of these things and more. But the track record is mixed, isn't it? So I understand among some people that you may have a sense of ambiguity about being called Christian. And by the same token, I also feel very proud of Graham Boswell today for choosing to be baptized, despite all of those concerns. So here's the thing, the church, and just to be clear, the church in all of its forms is a flawed human institution. And I know this because I'm one of the flawed human beings that make up the church. If being a Christian was just about church, the institution, I doubt I would be a Christian either, even though I think this particular church is a very special place filled with God's love and Christ's welcome. But for me, being a Christian isn't just about church. It's about following Jesus of Nazareth, the crucified and risen one. Despite all of the limitations and failings of the church and many Christians through the centuries, there is still something inspiring, compelling, and for me, transforming about Jesus and a new way that he made known. A new way of understanding God and what it means to be fully human. So let me name just 4 things that I see in Jesus that I wish for you, young people, on your personal journey through these troubled times. The first thing is courage, specifically the courage of faith. What do I mean by that? I mean a couple of things. First, none of us know how our lives are going to work out. I mean, the one thing that we can be sure of is that sooner or later we're going to run into some difficulties, sometimes some really deeply challenging difficulties in our lives. Jesus, being fully human, sometimes experienced those challenges too. Temptations of all kinds, the loss of his human father as far as we know, as well as his mentor, John the Baptist, disagreement with his family about what he was doing with his life. I'm sure you've run across that story where his family shows up and says, Jesus, what are you doing? Come back home. So he had that experience as well. And finally, betrayal by one of the people closest to him. Jesus also exhibited another kind of truly extraordinary courage. He lived in very challenging times. He was a Jewish man in a conquered land living under the oppression of the Roman Empire. He knew that the path he was on was extremely mortally dangerous, yet, despite all of these things and all of the uncertainty that comes with them, Jesus walked on, trusting that God walked with him, and trusting that the God who walked with him was a God of boundless love for the world. So because of that courage of faith, he was able to follow his calling regardless of what he faced. He continued to care for the world and those in need around him, to speak up for what was right, to inspire hope in desperate times, and to create a spiritual community, all the way to the end of his life, even all the way to death on a cross at the hands of the Romans. So I wish easier times for all of you, young folks, but I also wish for you that kind of courage, that kind of faith, because God knows the world needs it right now. The second powerful quality I see in Jesus is compassion. Compassion means, back to its Latin roots, to suffer with others, to not only be conscious of the pain or suffering that others are going through, but to be so conscious of it that you feel an urgent desire to help them or to spare them that pain and suffering. And this is one of the main things that you see Jesus doing in the Gospels. He sees those who others do not see and brings healing of body, mind, and spirit to people who lost hope. Everywhere he went, it says in the Gospel of Matthew, he was teaching and proclaiming good news, the good news of the kingdom, and curing every disease and sickness among the people. So the compassion we see in Jesus enables us to get beyond the prison of our own egos, which constantly demand our attention. And ego takes different forms. Sometimes it takes the form of the Pharisee, or ego saying, you are the best, you're the best one. But a lot of times ego also takes the form of criticizing us, because we're not living up to other people's standards or to the standards that we think we ought to be living up to. But Jesus' compassion enabled him to really see the people around him and to be responsive to their needs in genuine ways, like Tommy was talking about. Compassion sounds hard, and I guess it is, but when you actually try to love your neighbor as yourself, when you offer healing or blessing to others, you usually find yourself healed and blessed. Trust me, it's a much more satisfying way to live than constantly bowing down to the demands of your ego or to society's definitions of success and status. So I wish the compassion of Christ for you on your journey. Another important quality I see in Jesus is a commitment to spiritual community. The very first thing that Jesus does in his ministry is to call others to join him on the journey of faith. Come, follow me, he cries, and I will show you the way to life that really is life. The truth is, none of us can walk this path alone. All of us need companions to celebrate life's joys, support us through life's losses, challenge us to overcome evil in the world, and inspire us to keep going when things get tough. We just can't do it alone. I wouldn't be here today if it were not for spiritual mentors and friends and church communities that have been there for me all along the way. Pastor Jack Samuel, Reverend Kate Latimer, Cherry Livingston, Advent St. Nicholas Church in Quito, Ecuador, and of course, this church community, probably more than any other place. The way of Jesus is a shared way of learning together, making mistakes together, forgiving ourselves and one another, praying together, laughing together and crying together in community. It's a way where everybody is welcome too, where we are enriched and strengthened by our diversity, male and female, young and old, gay and straight, differently abled, black and white, and every color in between. Women, we're important members, by the way. I'm not just talking to Graham or the young men here, I'm talking to the young women too. And the old women and old men too, by the way. Women were important members of the Jesus community and key supporters of his ministry. In the Gospel of Luke, it indicates that some women were some of the primary financial backers of Jesus' ministry, helping it survive. It was women who stayed with him at the end of his life, women who went to the tomb when other companions hid in fear, and women who first announced that Jesus was risen. Everybody has a gift to offer in the beloved community of Jesus, and we need all of those gifts. We need all of them. I hope and pray that you can find companions for your journey too, and especially spiritual communities, churches that will accept your gifts and love and support you for who you are as you are. And finally, maybe the quality I most admire about Jesus was his holy imagination. Like the prophets before him, Jesus had a remarkable ability to see what others could not see, a vision of how life could be, how the world could be, and how it really ought to be, if only we would open ourselves to God's powerful, unconditional love. Where others saw people who were down and out, Jesus saw people who were blessed and told them so. Where others believed in revenge, Jesus saw the possibility of reconciliation and practiced it. Where others used violence to get their way, Jesus called for nonviolence and peacemaking. Where others saw greatness based on power over others, Jesus said true greatness only comes from the power of love put into practice. By serving others, caring for others, seeking justice for others, and challenging the things in this world that contradict God's love. I have come, he said, to bring good news to those who are poor, to proclaim release to the captives, and recovery of sight to all who are blind, to let the oppressed go free. I pray that you too will be filled with such holy imagination that you, young men and women, will see and proclaim new visions for our world. But those of us who are older are not off the hook. The same passage in Joel and in Acts says that we are called to dream new dreams for our world, and we owe it to those who are coming after us to do all we can to work with them to make those dreams real before we take our rest. And I really feel challenged by that. So at this point in my life, I don't know what form it might take for me, but I am not feeling content to stand by and leave the world as it is for those who are coming after us. And so for all of us who are older in this crowd this morning, I won't say where the line is, but I'm above it, I know that. For all of us who are older in this place today, this isn't about passing on the burden and responsibility of saving our world or caring for our world just to our young people. We are called to dream with them and to be with them in bringing their visions of a better world to pass in whatever form that might take for us. The challenge for you, Graham, but not just for you, for all of our young people, and not just for all of our young people, but for all of us, is that there are loud voices and powerful forces in our world urging us to turn away from this spiritual nonsense and just go cheap for power, or for money, or for material stuff, or for serving and entertaining ourselves before all else. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying yourself, earning money, becoming successful at what you do, and so on. And it's important even for people to have enough money and resources to be able to care for themselves and their families. Those things are not evil in themselves. But these things alone can never fully satisfy you. They can distract you, even make you happy for a while, but they can't satisfy the hunger of the heart and give real meaning like the way that Jesus showed us. So don't be afraid to be a Christian, a follower of Christ. And don't let anyone tell you that your way of being Christian is not valid. Look to Jesus of Nazareth and the Holy Scriptures for light, as it says in our church covenant, and don't let go of that. Somewhere between mindless faith and heartless consumerism, there is another way. It's not an easy way, I won't lie to you. I haven't lived up to it myself in my life. I haven't lived up to the courage of Christ or the compassion of Christ. I've done okay on the community stuff, I think. And I've tried to do something with holy imagination, but I haven't lived up to all that myself either. But don't be afraid to take that path. Don't be afraid to call yourself a Christian, and don't let others tell you that your way of being Christian isn't valid. For this is the only way I have found in my life to the life that really is life, in which God's dream of a new kind of world becomes a real possibility in our midst and in our world. Real possibility worth living for. And in some cases in the past, worth for some people dying for.